You can compare Ajax with Real Madrid. In a different country, of course, but it's massive. They teach you how to live like a professional.
Matthijs de Ligt, Frenkie de Jong, Wesley Sneijder, Christian Eriksen, Dennis Bergkamp and more. How do Ajax keep producing so many world-class talents? With de Ligt and de Jong as the centerpieces, we'll be trying to answer that question, as well as looking at how their youth academy has driven their recent success and how they can sustain it in the future. First off, let's look at where it all starts, at the Ajax Youth Academy.
We always invest in our youth academy, always.
It was not easy when you're 10 years old and a trainer said, "Hey Rafa, come on." You were not used to that, but it made you sharp and at the end you could handle the pressure.
Known as De Toekomst, which in English translates to the future. The academy is known as one of the best in Europe and even in the modern era, but its foundations were laid over 40 years ago in the minds of two extraordinary individuals. The first one being Rinus Michels, who pioneered total football. This emphasised quick passing, even quicker transitions in the offensive third, and the fluidity of all the players on the pitch. After Michels came his prodigy at Ajax, Johan Cruyff. This was a match made in footballing heaven, which saw Ajax win 3 back-to-back European Cups in the 1970s. After leaving the club and heading to Barcelona, Cruyff returned to Ajax in the 80s, and with his extensive knowledge and everything he learned at the Nou Camp, he laid the foundation for an unbelievably gifted and talented Ajax side to win their 4th European title in 1995.
But we always will be investing in those stars of the future and challenging the top of Europe, because that's where we belong.
So what does the youth system actually involve?
It's tactics, it's intelligence, principles and skills.
This is how they produce such technical masterminds as Rafael van der Vaart, Dennis Bergkamp and Wesley Sneijder. The players aren't just helping Ajax on the pitch though, they're also helping with the finances too. The club has been so successful at developing talent from a young age and selling them on for huge amounts that they've chalked up almost £500 million in transfer fees since the turn of the century, thanks to names such as Justin Kluivert, Christian Eriksen, Wesley Sneijder, Toby Alderweireld, Jan Vertonghen and Davy Klaassen. But in Frenkie de Jong and Matthijs de Ligt, Ajax have brought in over £120 million from just those two. Granted, the long winding path from the entrance door to the exit door is a pretty long one, but it's paid off immensely for the club in the long run. Of course, money isn't everything these days, but if they're going to continue to produce top players off this in-house production line, they're going to need some cash to do so. So where does the money actually go? Well, first off, it goes to creating the next batch of young stars within the club, and secondly, it brings key additions into the team with the likes of Daley Blind, Dusan Tadic and Hakim Ziyech.
They try and find a mix between their own youth, the young talent in the Netherlands, and some international players and some older players which are willing to come to Ajax and stay here for a couple of years to build the team around it.
Van der Sar said of last season's team, once every couple of years you have a crop of talent coming through. Combine this with experienced players like Tadic and Blind and players who have stayed like David Neres, it has made a fantastic team to watch. So how fantastic has this team been to watch? Before the 1920 season, Ajax lost 2 of the biggest jewels in their crown in both Matthijs de Ligt and Frenkie de Jong, and it's little wonder why. On the pitch, their impact was so good, and the impact of this generation has started within the last few years to really shine, starting with their 2017 Europa League final appearance. In the years that followed, a domestic double was completed, as well as a fantastic run to the semi-finals of the Champions League, with them also nearly reaching the final.
It was as if they were playing on a little field with their friends, you know, and that spirit was really typical for the last season in the Champions League.
They often say that Ajax is Amsterdam. Well, last season's Champions League campaign proved that in many, many different ways.
It was this which really captured the romantics' eye and showed that Ajax were a brilliant team full of individual quality and an amazing team spirit.
If one player scores, they're happy for the fellow teammate. There's no selfishness.
Now, there's the obvious jibe that the Eredivisie isn't the most challenging of leagues for Ajax, but it's in the Champions League last season where they really stepped their game up. Throughout the whole campaign, they played 12 games, suffered just 2 losses, none in the group stage, and put together some fantastic victories away at Juventus, Tottenham, and Real Madrid.
We humiliated them in their own stadium. That was great.
Throughout those games, 7 of the goal scorers came from the academy, including Donny van de Beek's winner at the new Tottenham Stadium and Matthijs de Ligt's fantastic header as they won away at Juventus.
They had a lot of confidence. They were just going into the pitch and they were just going to play football, and they weren't impressed with Juventus or Real Madrid. They were just going to play their own game.
Throughout the Champions League campaign, the same 11 players played in at least 10 of Ajax's 12 games, showcasing their consistency and quality within the whole team. The consistency throughout the side, along with the players that have been brought into the club, is what makes the team so good. For example, you've got Kasper Dolberg and Frenkie de Jong, who were brought in at a young age and tutored for the last of their teenage years in the youth academy. You've also got, of course, de Ligt and Van der Beek, who came from the youth system from a younger age, and then they've added in the likes of Hakim Ziyech, David Neres and Tagliafico, who have all blended in so well to the Ajax way of playing. Of course, the one constant throughout all of this is the total football Ajax way of playing. The best thing about this is that all the players are technically brilliant, understand every position on the pitch, and all have very similar capabilities, with 1 or 2 players standing out from the rest. Now departed captain Matthijs de Ligt is an obvious one. The centre-half, who joined the club at 9 years old, is well versed in the technical aspects of the game, plays with the maturity of a seasoned pro, is a physical specimen, and understands the game both on and off the ball with exceptional ability. All this despite being just 20 years old. The fact that Juventus, a notoriously tough school for defenders, are willing to pay around £70 million for him is testament to his class. As for Frenkie de Jong, well, his route to Barcelona from Ajax is all too familiar, following in the footsteps of Johan Cruyff. And his ability has been talked up by former Ajax and Barcelona man Patrick Kluivert, who is currently the Barcelona Academy director. He said of de Jong that he always looks at vertical passes towards all the central midfielders and the strikers, but when he's got the ball at his feet and he's got space, he's also very quick with his vertical runs. With his incredible appreciation and understanding of time and space both on and off the ball, it's almost like de Jong is the brainchild of the great Cruyff himself. So with all these class players, you'd probably think that the future is assured for Ajax. Well, not exactly, but luckily for them, they do have a plan in place to deal with it. According to CEO Edwin van der Sar, he plans for the bulk of the team to stick around for another year or 2, but does admit that it's inevitable they're going to have to sell a few stars. And this is exactly where the transfer market comes into play for Ajax. They've combined a fantastic youth system approach with being economically smart in the transfer market and bringing in and then developing and selling further talents. After being trained at the youth academy, Donny van der Beek is now worth a reported £40 million. The same thing goes for Hakim Ziyech, who was bought in for just £11 million from Utrecht. David Neres was brought in from South America along with Tagliafico. Both now are worth upwards of £30 million. And with the case of Matthijs de Ligt, well, they've already reinvested some of that money by bringing in 21-year-old Mexican Edson Alvarez, who has even taken de Ligt's old number 4.
They have also the money to keep the players, so they can pay the same salary what they do in Everton or in Sevilla. So that's why all the players, and they play Champions League, so everybody wants to stay. And of course, when the big clubs are coming, then they're going. But yeah, why not staying in Ajax? Because it's a bigger club than Sevilla, for example.
So it looks like the perfect storm really is what Ajax are hoping for. Whilst keeping along their tradition of bringing through fantastic youth players and brilliant attacking positions to delight the fans and the rest of the club, they're also looking smarter in the transfer market. Of course, when these two blend, it really does come off well for them. Last season, they pulled off a fantastic domestic double, taking home the Eredivisie and the Dutch Cup. This also makes it even more admirable that with all the money they've brought in through transfers, they still haven't splashed the cash massively and entered the crazy world that is the transfer market these days. The thing is though, how long before they are pressured into really joining the big clubs by spending money in the transfer market in the hope of achieving European glory? After all, between 1997 and their most latest Champions League semi-final, well, there was 22 years. So this leaves me with the question, what happens when the drought lasts a little too long, or they can't bring in the right players for the right money? Do they just sit back and let domestic success slip away, or do they give in to the multi-million-pound transfer market? In most cases, they will move along very nicely just below the transfer market mayhem. Yes, they're not necessarily playing in the most glamorous domestic league, but in some cases this can help. Sometimes they can sacrifice results for development, and sometimes they don't have to win trophies just to stay financially stable. And all of this whilst promising potential young players and new signings the chance to develop at one of the best schools in Europe. That is something incredible to have on their CV, whether they reach the Ajax first team or not. Who knows, if they can produce more players like the likes of Matthijs de Ligt and Frenkie de Jong, we could see more glorious European nights in the stadium, and the European trophy could finally be heading back to Amsterdam.